Morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 5th, 2018 meeting of Henderson County Fiscal Court. We're glad you're with us this morning. We'll begin, as we always do, with an invocation. Joining us this morning is Miss Amy Call, Associate Pastor of Chapel Hill Methodist Church. Please join her in this morning's prayer. Stand with me.
Let us pray. Blessed God, we are thankful for your presence here. And we pray, Lord, that you provide guidance as we continue this process today. Lord, we know that our county is in your hands and that is a wonderful place for it to be. As you have given us the responsibility for caring for fiscal matters here, we pray that we take that responsibility to heart and that we use that responsibility to move our county forward. Lord, be with us today and all days, and give us discernment and guidance. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Call. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And for the first time, would Fiscal Court Clerk Kirk Wiesen call the roll, please?
Magistrate Putman.
Here.
Magistrate Alexander.
Here.
Magistrate Todd.
Here.
And Magistrate Wilkinson, Magistrate Warren, both absent.
Gentlemen, you have in your packets before you the May 22nd minutes Fiscal Court meeting. After a period of review, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other corrections, clarifications, or additions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
These votes won't take long this morning, will they? Thank you again for being here. We're going to begin with a very special occasion. One of our terrific corporate partners here in Henderson County is Century Aluminum, as many of you know, and they took special interest in the work of two social service agencies during the recent flooding. We had both the American Red Cross chapter here and the Salvation Army chapter here. And with that, I'd like to bring up Century Aluminum Human Resources Director Karen Cecil. Would you introduce your guest too?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us here today. I have with me Levi Chaffin. Levi's the plant manager at the Seabury plant. I'm the Human Resource Director for Century North America, but have been involved with the Seabury plant for 25 years. What I would like to do is turn it over to Levi. He's going to tell you a little bit about our plant and then present our donations.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Again, my name is Levi Chaffin. I'm the plant manager at the Century Aluminum site in Robards. This year's a special year for us. We'll be celebrating 45 years at the site in the community. Over the past 45 years, the site has changed owner-operators many times, most of those not being U.S.-based or even North America-based companies. Century acquired the facility back in 2013. Century is a United States-based company. Most of the assets, the majority of our assets are in the United States. We have a lot of pride in keeping our customer base in the United States, jobs in the United States, and most of the spend is in the United States. As I reflect back over the past 45 years, especially if you look at the Robards site or the Seabury site, and if you go back 45 years, there's approximately 41 smelters in the United States. And, most of those have come and gone. Today there's only 6. And I look at, Century, that site, how has it stood the test of time? I think, obviously, access to power, which we're going to talk about after this, but more importantly, the people in the community. Butch, you were part of it for 30-some-odd years. I met a while ago. But, the tenacity, if you look at the engagement in the workforce, et cetera, and the support of the community, I think, is a huge testament to this site and is why we're still going strong. So if you look at, every quarter I have to report to my boss and my peers and to the board, and there's 4 things that they look for. One is EHS, Environmental Health and Safety. And if you look at the past 45 years, and really the past 10 or 15 years, we've exceeded those expectations. Environmental stewards, health and safety, et cetera. The second one is profitability. We've earned the right for more capital. We've invested a lot of money into that facility, and we have a plan for another 45 years if you guys will allow us.
Absolutely.
Yep. The third one is quality. We make a unique product at our facility. Most of our products go into the HVAC arena, and we're constantly getting better and better and growing that market. But the last one, which is a little bit harder to measure, is engagement. We spend a lot of time as Century citizens, as Century leaders, talking about engagement. And we look at it in a lot of different ways. We encourage our team members. We currently have 516 team members. One of our expectations is salary and/or hourly is community involvement. So we push for, hey, how do we get in the community? How do we volunteer our services, labor, et cetera, in the community? So a lot of those initiatives we've kicked off over the last several years, and we've got some plans to do more of that. And the other one is around donations. So if you look at the flooding that happened the first part of this year in the spring, a lot of our team members were affected by that. We run a 24 operation. You can't just shut it down. And if you look at the people in our community, there was 2 services that came forward to help with that, and one is the Red Cross, and the other one is the Salvation Army. And we would just, as we like to give back to the community where we can, we would like to make two donations. The first one to the Red Cross.
The representative of the Red Cross here, Tracy Alexander, is that right? Would you mind coming up, please? This is Tracy Alexander. Am I getting that correct? And you're chairman of the local chapter. And why don't you come right down front here? And Beth, I would very much appreciate it if you got a picture of this. Thank you, Tracy. And thank you for all the work the Red Cross did. Red Cross opened up evacuation shelters here in town that served several dozen people who were forced out of their homes. They mobilized quickly, and we really appreciated how efficient they were in doing that, and it was certainly noticed, obviously, by both Fiscal Court and Century Aluminum, so thank you very, very much. Karen, and next you have a presentation for Salvation Army. And Butch, if you would introduce the representatives here.
Sure. As chairman of the board over there, Karen, let me thank you and Levi both for all you've done over the years. You continuously give. If I know Karen she's laughing now, but you've been generous, so generous to the Salvation Army. But I'd like to bring up Captain Quinn and Roy Pullum, and I want to give a mention because Bruce Todd sits on the board with us too, so Magistrate Todd. Roy, you want to come up too? Roy works real hard. I call him Mr. Salvation Army. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, Levi and Karen. Thank you very much to Salvation Army volunteers and Red Cross volunteers who helped us during a time of need. And there's one thing I know about this community is we pull together when we have to. And our corporate citizens, especially Century Aluminum, are some of our best and brightest that way. Karen, thank you again very much. And Levi, I look forward to come out and visiting soon.
October.
Okay, next, I've invited both Big River CEO Bob Berry and HMP&L President Chris Heemgartner to come and talk to us today a little bit about what's going on with Station 2 power plant. You've read it in the news lately. It will have either a direct or indirect impact on folks out in our county, so I thought it was important to bring them here to give us a rundown on what is happening now. And with that, I'd like to ask Bob Berry to come to the podium, please. Thank you for being here today, and I know you have a bit of a presentation for us.
Well, thank you, Judge. I appreciate you inviting us here today. And so I'm going to go quickly through my presentation. Please stop me and ask if you got questions during the presentation. Please and stop and ask. If I get this right. So just to give you a little background, on May the 1st, Big Rivers did give notice to the Henderson Utility Commission and Mr. Heimgartner that the series of contracts between Big Rivers and the city has terminated. The contracts are really self-terminating. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation. In that notice, we also offered to continue to operate those plants under the current terms and conditions until such time that they could make alternative arrangements for their power supply, but no later than May 31st of 2019. So that gives them 13 months or so to try to determine what to do with the power supply. And we're waiting for a response from Hempel today on if they want us to continue to operate those plants until May 31st. So again, some kind of the contract details. These contracts was entered into in August of 1970. They're 48 years old. As you heard Levi speak to earlier, a lot's changed in 45 or 48 years. So, but the contracts were that Big Rivers and the city, we would operate the plants. The city owns the assets. The city would reserve enough capacity out of that plant to serve their customers, and then Big Rivers would take that remaining capacity. Regardless if we needed it or not, we took that capacity. Again, I told you the contracts on their own terms terminate when the station units are no longer of normal, continuous, reliable operation for the production of economically competitive production of electricity. And so when the parties put these contracts together in the 70s, they knew this day was coming. They just didn't know when. And so that's why that clause was put in the contract. They're self-terminating. This is not a situation where the contract's good for one party and bad for the other. It's in a situation where the contract's bad for both parties. It's not one party trying to shift costs to another because it's uneconomic for both parties, and we'll cover that shortly. So after Big Rivers has been losing money on the units for a couple of years now, we decided to do an extensive cost-benefit evaluation. We did one internally. It came up that the units were no longer of continuous operation for the competitive production of electricity. We wanted to check ourselves, so we went out and we hired a third-party firm to come in and check to do the same analysis independently of ours. We hired a company called the Brattle Group. They're very well known in the utility industry across the country. They do a lot of work for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and some other folks as well. The Brattle Group, they concluded the same thing that we did, that it was no longer capable of normal, continuous, reliable operation and economic. Big River's evaluation of Station 2 is also consistent, and I'm sure Chris is going to talk about those later this morning, about the third party that came in and performed the integrated resource plan for the city. And so when you look at the results, while the numbers are not exact, they're very, very close and saying the same thing. So I wanted to show you, this is the 2017 cash flow on Station 2. Now this is total, this is not Big River's portion, this is not the city, it's the total cash flow. So when you look at the variable costs, it was about $38.3 million worth of coal and reagent that the two parties bought for the energy. That energy was worth about $31.9 million in the market today, which means that was a loss of $6.3 million. And you're not even starting to cover the labor cost, all the fixed O&M costs being labor and the maintenance cost of facility and the capital cost for upgrades, which is another $25.6 million in 2017. But we did get some capacity revenue. The capacity alone is worth about $4.5 million in the market today. So when you look at it, running Station 2 in 2017, it was a $27.5 million loss. And that $27.5 million loss is is the obligation of Big Rivers is about 2/3, and the city is about 1/3. It's actually, you can see the percentage is 63 and 37, and that's based on the capacity reservation. So, as you can see, this contract is not, it's not something that's valuable for one and not the other, and one party trying to shift cost on another. It's really that the units are just beyond their useful life, and it's time to do something different. And it's time to do something different quickly, because these numbers are not changing for 18. We don't expect them to change for 19. So for every month we delay this process, it's about a little over $2 million for Big Rivers ratepayers and the customers here in Henderson. And as you know, if you're adding $2 million more to your ratepayers, meaning your rates are that much higher, then it also gives you a disadvantage for economic development in the community as well. So, and Judge, that's really all I had. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I think it'd be good to go ahead and bring Chris up and let him give his take on the situation. Then we might have you both come up for questions if anybody has them.
Okay.
Is that okay? Thank you.
Well, good morning, Judge, and thank you all
Good
for
morning.
inviting me up here. So Bob referenced our integrated resources plan, and for me, that's a pretty good place to start. So I'm going to give you more background than Bob did, but I'll preview it a little bit. We arrive at the same location, so by a very different route. So I want to walk you through how Henderson Municipal looked at this. Hope I will. So just an overview, what's in Station 2, what an IRP looks like, and then what it ultimately recommends. So Henderson is a small municipal utility, and small is kind of a relative term. Most municipal utilities have less than 1,000 customers. We have about 12,000. So when you compare it to that, it's relatively small. The smallest investor-owned, I'm breaking all your stuff here, the smallest investor-owned it is Madison Gas and Electric with over 100,000 customers. And typical investor-owned utilities are much, much larger, over 1 million customers. So when I say small, it's a relative thing. But it serves the city of Henderson. And just to be clear, we don't serve all of the city of Henderson. There are Kenergy and Kentucky Utilities customers inside the Henderson city limits. And in addition, we serve about 1,000 customers just outside of the city limits in Henderson County. So we were organized over 100 years ago, and we had our first power station built in the late 1940s. Station 2 was built much later between 1970 and 1972. And I'm not going to cover everything that's on these slides. I'm just leaving these with you guys. We have a small transmission system and a fairly extensive distribution system that covers the city of Henderson, and we've got 7 substations inside the city of Henderson. The Station 2 plant consists of 2 units. So when we talk about Station 2, people think, well, it's just one generator. It's not. It's 2 generators. They were originally designed to be 175 megawatt units, and by reference, our peak last year was 110 megawatts. In the late 1960s, we were forecasting that the city of Henderson would have over a 300 megawatt load on peak, and that was forecast to be around 1990. Never even came close to that. So in part, these units were sized for growth that never happened, but the capacity was used in the market, and Big Rivers, our operator, used the spare capacity and energy to serve many other customers, including aluminum plants and others. When they were designed, they were built for a 30-year life, and they were commissioned in 1972. So, one thing that you can say is anything that can't go on forever must eventually end, and we're there. As Bob said, it's time to do something about it. That's the reason I was brought into Henderson, was to figure out what to do next. So there's a lot of different ways that you can figure that out. What I wanted to do is what's called an integrated resources plan, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later. And that really is kind of the next step. An integrated resources plan is where you take a look at all possible sources of energy and then all of your forecasted uses of energy for a very long period of time, and you try and match the lowest cost option to serve your customers given the different resource mix you can have. And why would you want that? Well, when you look at our costs, the cost to procure power is over 75% of our total costs. Everything else we have Everything else we have in terms of cost is nearly a rounding error. So really it is all about buying power and getting power. So for us, this is a key thing, and I think Bob would say the same thing. It's how do you get power, how do you make it, or how do you buy it? So the IRP, as I said, you want to take a look at all of your sources and uses of power and try and figure out the lowest cost option. This is what goes into it. This is just the major sections that are in it. And this, what you're looking at here, is the load profile for Henderson Municipal Light and Power for one day in 2017. This was our peak day. And I wanted to include this because there's two things about power markets that people have to understand. These are separate issues, but it's really important, and people who are not in the power business don't get this. But if we were operating as a standalone utility, not connected to the rest of the world, and we had to serve our customers, at the peak here it was 110 megawatts. That would mean that in order to serve our customers, we would have to have a 110 megawatt motor generator set that actually carried the customers. Now, even on the peak day, you wouldn't need the 110 megawatts most of the day. So the amount of capacity that you have to have, how big your generator is one thing. And that's usually sized to meet your instantaneous peak load. That peak usually happens less than 30 hours a year for the average utility. So it's a very tiny fraction, but you got to have a big enough generator to carry that. So capacity is how big your generator is. The next thing is how much coal or natural gas or any other fuel did you have to burn to get there? Because you're burning it at a certain rate here, and you're burning it at a slower rate down here. And when I say burning, it could be wind blowing, it could be hydro moving through a dam, whatever your fuel is. So the energy that you use is how much fuel you had to burn to get the power out of the plant to serve the customers that you have at that moment. Capacity is how big the motor has to be to handle your ultimate peak. Why is that important? Well, when you look at the capacity market, so you basically, there is a separate market for the size of the generators. And when you look at that capacity market, it is not in balance in America today. Not even close. There's way too much capacity out there. Way too much. And so what happens is the price that you pay for the capacity is determined by the demand. In other words, it's a buyer's market. And they're not willing to pay very much, and there's a lot of sellers out there, so people are just dumping it on the market. So people are not getting much. Bob referred to about $4 million. That's $4 million on 300 megawatts of capacity. That's nothing. That's not going to cover. I mean, you think about what your carrying costs are on a $300 million debt, and that capacity charge doesn't even come close to covering it. And really, it's the carrying cost of capital that your capacity has to cover. The capacity market in MISO is settled once a year. So the whole rest of the year, there's bilateral agreements that are made between players. But the point is, it's not in equilibrium, and it settles annually. The energy market's entirely different. We make, as an industry, as much energy as we need every day, every second, instantaneously. And it settles every single day. You don't make more and store it, although we're hopefully going to get there someday as an industry. Today we're not. You have to make what you're going to use right when you're going to use it and deliver it. There's no warehouse where you keep this stuff. It's made and used instantaneously, speed of light transmission and all that. So the energy markets are in balance. They're in balance every day. They're in balance all the time. And when they're not in balance, what you have is a brownout or a blackout. And so the industry works very hard to make sure that doesn't happen. It has happened in the past. I'm not going to say it won't happen in the future. It probably will. But that is what the industry works to avoid. So, now back to Henderson. We took a look in 2017 at what our load forecast was for the long term, and we retained GDS to help us put together an integrated resources plan. Our load, we forecast an average peak of 107 megawatts. That's how big the motor has to be. That's our capacity. And we forecast 620,000 megawatt hours per year. And we forecast out for over 20 years. And so this is what the energy forecast looks like. The central line in the middle is the least squares fit. It's the regression line. And you'll notice it's flat. Within the Henderson boundaries, we're not forecasting much growth. We're probably going to have some in the new industrial park that's been planned at the end of Borax Drive. But at the same time, our customers are getting a lot more energy efficient. Think about in your homes. You change out an air conditioner, you go to a flat screen TV, you install LED light bulbs. So we're expecting the load of our customers to decline at about the same rate that we add load with new customers. So our energy forecast is flat. Likewise, our capacity forecast, this is the peak demand, our capacity forecast is flat. Now, these two forecasts, we've got sensitivity bands, and you see all that stuff above and below. And those are assuming very high levels of economic activity and very low levels of economic activity. Very warm summers, very mild summers. Very cold winters, very mild winters. So that's where all of these bands come around there, because you want to look at that and make sure that if you have vibrant economic activity in a really hot summer, that you don't black your customers out. So we did look at all of that. And then you take a look, and of course we had GDS do this, have them look at everything. Throw everything in the mix. And we had them look at modular nuclear. We had them look at energy storage. We had them look wind PPAs, continuing operation of Station 2. Everything got thrown in there, as well as all the different market options that we've got. And then you take all of those different resource options, and you put together these scenarios. Now, these are likely scenarios. There's a few things like energy storage didn't price out as price competitive enough to even continue looking at. It wasn't close. Modular nuclear are the last three options that you see, scenario 7, 8, and 9, along with market purchases. Scenario 6 is just going on market purchases. In other words, go in the day-ahead market and let MISO go ahead and set the price and sell it to you. Station 2 options are the status quo and then retire Unit 1, so it's before Scenario 1. Those are the two Station 2 options. The first column, the status quo, the top of that column actually goes to 312 megawatts. We just cut it off so you can show the scale. The second one, and what this shows, is that we have a lot more capacity in one unit at the plant than we need. So that would mean that the rest of the capacity would have to be marketed, and any energy associated would also have to be marketed for this to make sense. So these were the scenarios we had GDS evaluate. When you look at what we need to do at Station 2, this is in order to keep it running. Now, this is regardless of whether Big Rivers keeps operating it or we hire someone else or we do it ourselves. These are investments that need to be made very quickly in order to keep the units up and running. There's the 2 turbine overhauls, and that's just, these things need to be overhauled about every 8 years or so. But the bottom dry ash and the wastewater are required to meet 2023 Clean Water Act deadlines. So no matter what, we have to do that. There's some other things that we have to do to comply with those, but those options need to be executed whether you keep the plant open or not, so we consider those common to everything excluded from this analysis. The two things that I really want to call your attention to is the bottom dry ash and the wastewater are very expensive. Between them, they're over $50 million, over $55 million, and that would have to be bonded. That would be a big pill for the city of Henderson. But we did take a look at that and find out what it would be. We also looked at what it would cost to operate the plant, both with Big Rivers and if we hired a third party, and we got prospective quotes on some of that. Here was part of the analysis we did on what were the options. So the first 3 options are powered by natural gas. Wärtsilä is a manufacturer. They think big piston engines, really big. They're about 10,000 horsepower engines, over 9 megawatts, and they're actually not bad. Wärtsilä is they're an international. I believe they're in Holland. Is that right, Bob? Yeah, they're in Holland, but anyway, they sell engines all over the world. And there's some really neat things about the Wärtsiläs. They can ramp up from a cold start to full load in like a minute. So they're really, really very capable. When you look at the next 2 options, these are turbines. The LM2500 is a simple turbine, which means it's a jet engine on a stand, and it turns a shaft and spins your generator, and you're off to the races. The LM6000 is a jet engine that's sitting there, and you take the hot exhaust off of it and run it through a boiler and generate some more power. So they call that a combined cycle combustion turbine, or a CCCT. And why that's important is when you get over to the last column, you're looking at the heat rates. So that's how much energy do you have to put in to get megawatts out. The lower that number is, the better. It doesn't really compare on the modular nuclear because the nature of the fuel and everything else. But What you'll notice there is that even for the 3 natural gas options, you have very different heat rates. The heat rate at Station 2 right now is about 11.5. And when we run it lightly loaded, it's over 12. So it takes a lot more coal to generate a megawatt than it does natural gas in terms of energy content. So to Bob's point earlier, the units themselves are not thermally efficient. So forget about whether they're economically efficient. From a thermodynamic point of view, they're not as efficient as a modern plant. Not surprising. 45 years old, probably a 55-year-old design, and here we are today with modern technology that beats it. Not a surprise. We also included solar and all of its costs, wind, and modular nuke. We also looked at demand-side issues. So when you look at it, is there something that Henderson can do to help its customers use less power? And is it cheaper to invest in using less power than to buy power on the market? And it turns out the answer is yes. There are some things that are definitely helpful, and we're going to be pursuing that. But we're going to do them regardless of which solution we go with because they make that kind of good sense. So we didn't necessarily include them in any of the analyses. We did look at the cost of fuel, though, and here are the price projections for both natural gas and coal. The 2 bottom lines are the projected cost for the next 20 years for coal, and the 3 top lines, I guess that's kind of a turquoise and then a deep green and a yellow. Those are natural gas prices that we forecasted out. The top yellow line on natural gas would be if the EPA becomes outright hostile to fracking and pipelines and everything else. It would drive the cost of natural gas up. We worry about that because going back to this, a lot of our options are natural gas fueled. So you got to worry about if you go to a natural gas fuel and then all of a sudden the price of natural gas spikes, what does that do to price of power? The answer is it goes up. The question is, does it go up more than coal would have gone up at the same time, or wind, or anything else? And that's the question that we had GDS help us answer. So we looked at capacity prices as well. Now this is important because the bottom blue line is what we think capacity is going to do. The top blue line would be if a lot of plants that aren't anticipated to retire suddenly retire. So that's what that would look like. The point is today, MISO's capacity prices are about 30 cents a kilowatt month. We're paying over $9, almost $10 a kilowatt month out of Station 2. So to give you an idea, again, the capacity is very expensive out of Station 2, and you can't get much for it on the market. So if you had 1,000 of these to sell, you would lose about $9.40 on each one of them. You don't make it up on volume. And then last we had GDS take a look at, all right, this is what our load would look like, and I picked a day here. This is in next May's forecast. And what they looked at was for a particular scenario, you've got what's called block power, you've got a reciprocating engine, a RICE, you've got SEPA power, which is hydropower we buy from the federal government, and then you've got market purchases. And since you've got the RICE, the question is, does it make sense to run it or not? And so what GDS does is they forecast out where the prices are going to be every hour for that day, and then they figure out which one of these 2 mixes is the lower cost for your customers. They do that for each scenario, any way you want to figure it, for every day for the next 20 years. So that when I show you the next numbers, there's a ton of calculation that went on behind the scenes here. And I wanted to give you an idea what it all was. And then we took all of those costs from GDS and net present valued them. If you're familiar with that process, it allows you to compare future costs on an equal basis. They gave us 3 different outputs, and I'm really only going to focus on the first one. You've got the others. You can take a look at them. What we looked at here was if you have normal fuel prices, then what would happen under high and low capacity cost forecasts? And what you'll see is that the lowest cost options are the ones in the middle, scenarios 1 through 6, and they basically are a mix of either small Henderson-owned facilities and market or pure market. Neither nuclear nor Station 2 fit in economically with any of this. And then if you go to higher and higher fuel prices, here's the moderate natural gas prices, and here's extreme natural gas prices, you still see that the market options, and in particular when you look at scenarios 5 and 6, Those are a mix of wind power purchase agreements and Henderson-owned peaking units or pure market. Those end up still being the most cost-effective. This is the only one where statistically I could say that Station 2 now makes sense, and it's really keeping both units online. So essentially you could say if you're going to gamble 10 or 15 years out that those units are going to be worth their weight in gold to keep, then you can let out a huge bond issue, keep both units online, sell at a loss in the market, charge your customers more, and 15 years from now, rates may go down. That is the Station 2 option. That's the only viable one. And it's pretty darn speculative. It's not what I recommend. What I recommend is that we go to a mix of internal owned generation and market purchases. So just in summary, we took a good long look at all of our loads. We took a look at what it was going to cost to run Station 2. We looked at alternative supply and demand side management options. We looked at, and we were recommending the lowest net present value options, which are, again, 5 and 6. Statistically, they were a dead heat. And then we're going to be doing energy efficiency and demand response activities. Now, at this point, my presentation ends, and I would say, so what do you do with this? And my answer to my commission was, well, we've got to go talk to BREC about terminating the contracts and really doing what we need to do to phase out of Station 2. And that's the responsible thing to do. Now, what BREC would have had to do if I'd approached Bob and said, hey, Bob, we'd like to terminate these contracts, he would have gone, no, don't do that. No, just kidding. He would have said, well, gosh, we reached the same conclusion. And this is not a surprise. Owensboro reached the same conclusion. They did an IRP that was, in fact, they did two, and their conclusions for their coal plants were identical. And they're going to pursue a different path with those. And they're comparable coal plants, relatively the same size, same age, same thermal efficiency, all that. So I would have gone back to Bob and said, Bob, can we talk about this? And he would have said, well, sure, we can talk about it, but I need to notify the Public Service Commission. We'll need to do a filing and so on and so forth. So Bob just got there a little ahead of me. And had he not done that, I would have turned around and probably asked him to do that fairly soon. So with that, and I've given you guys just a ton of information. I apologize for that. I'll leave it with you, and I'm available to answer any questions on it. But I'd like to kick it open to questions for both Bob and I at this point.
I would like Bob to come back up, please. And Chris, to both of you, I appreciate the information. It's interesting. It's also impactful in our community, and I would like to begin the questioning by asking, from a customer's point of view, both residential and commercial, what would you tell them about what they can expect in the next 2 years from whatever happens with this arrangement?
What's a retail question? Yeah, so you're asking a retail question, and that's my business. So the answer is that they shouldn't see a rate increase that's very large. I mean, right now we're looking at rate increases that are essentially rate of inflation. There's nothing here that would tend to drive anything more than that. In the long run, a market and small peaker option is cheaper than the other options. The rates will probably still have to go up somewhat, but they won't go up as much as it would under the other options. So short term, not a heck of a lot. Long term, it should get us out of volatility, and you should see small, smooth price increases, not jerking people around with huge increases, that kind of thing.
And it's kind of the same thing, Judge. When we looked at, did our evaluation, to stay in this contract, to stay where we are today, we're looking at we'd have to raise our rates 3.5% over what they are today currently.
To stay in the current arrangement.
That's correct.
Yeah. And is it fair to say you're approaching this from a collegial point of view in solving this issue? It is not adversarial. You're working together to create the best case scenario here.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that we have different interests, and collegial is probably a good way to describe it. I'm not sure that it's not adversarial. In some senses, it is. But Bob and I, we seem to be working pretty well together, and any differences we have are dealt with civilly, and it's been a good relationship.
Well, I think it goes without saying that an effective cooperative solution helps our community. Something opposite of that does not. So I know you understand that.
Right, and I do, and it should not be adversarial. I mean, you saw the numbers. Both parties should want out of this thing as fast as we can get there. Every month we delay, it's $2 million or more to the customers collectively. So it should not be adversarial. It's not good for either party. And so I don't see it as adversarial. Chris, I don't know what your position is going to be.
So, I mean, one thing to think about is, Bob could have filed with the PSC because it's $2 million a month. I'm just accepting. I've analyzed the Brattle Group study. I agree that, given all the assumptions they made, which are reasonable assumptions, that the outcome is right. He could have gone to the PSC and said, hey, we need out of this in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. It doesn't make any difference to Big River's customers. It makes a big difference to Henderson. He instead went in with a 13-month request, which is sufficient time for us to get together with MISO and find alternative power sources and begin contracting to build a peaker and do all that stuff. So the timing is good. If he had gone much quicker, it would have been not good for Henderson. But 13 months should be enough time for us to get our act together, and we're already making steps down that road.
Any questions?
If I could break it down, just in layman's terms, because that was a lot to digest, really. It was for me, and I'm assuming the average guy or lady would maybe struggle to make sense of it all. But so let me just try to kind of frame it. You guys fill it in for me, keeping it simple. Station 2 is generating excessive power at a loss, high cost, to continue to maintain with the upgrades and everything to make it competitive and try to sell it on the open market is not feasible because the cost benefits just not there. And the gas is the cheapest way to go now. Coal's old, expensive to process it, turn it into energy. So am I. I know that was kind of a short summation of it, but I was just trying to get a general framework of everything you guys were saying.
Yeah, and I think you've got a good general overview. And it's going to come down between the Utility Commission and Chris what they want to do as an option. I'm not here to give you options. I've got my own company to worry about. I don't need to be dabbling in someone else's. But I will tell you today, the market, you can get a 10-year fixed price on the market today for less than $40 a megawatt hour, fixed for the next 10 years. If you look at what actually costs to generate out of that plant, it's about $56 a megawatt hour. So when you do the math, it's $16 a megawatt hour, and Chris, we usually average 600,000 megawatt hours. It's over $9 million a year difference. That's just Station 2's part, and we've got 1.5 times that. So.
Got it.
That helps?
So I would say that, right now, Bob's numbers, we figure it's about $54 a megawatt hour. He figures about 56. There's differences in what we pay for coal and lime and how we value stuff on an accounting basis. But I don't want to quibble with the amount because the big picture is correct. You can get it for about $40 on the market. Some of that is natural gas, but also, one of the things we've seen is a real dynamic in the market is renewables coming in. Particularly in this region, it's been wind. And that has been, it's subsidized power. They get a $20 a megawatt hour credit to generate. But, regardless, there's a lot of times when there's a ton of wind out there that's selling for $10 a megawatt hour. Yeah. And it's tough for any fossil plant or a nuclear plant to compete with, wind when it's and so you shut the plant down. Well, these plants aren't meant to be run up and down very quickly. So when you shut them down, they're down for at least a day, more likely a couple of weeks. And then when you ramp them up, you want them to run for a week or two. And, during that time, you're going to have a lot of hours where there's a ton of wind out there and you're selling at a loss. And so running these things as a merchant plant right now is a pretty dicey proposition.
I would like to add one thing, too, is, if you go back to my chart that had the numbers on it, I do want to give Chris some credit. We're not just sitting here doing nothing, okay? Chris has been generous enough to allow us to put those units in what we call economic commit status, which means MISO only runs them when they're economic. And so that helps reduce that $6 million loss on the variable column significantly. And that's something that Chris has been willing to do with us, I guess, starting last October. So
Well, and to Bob's credit, we know that it doesn't make sense to put good money after bad. So they've been really good about what we need to do on capital to keep these things running for a short period of time. So, the carrying cost of the units has been coming down compared to what it would have been if you just marched right along the path. So it's been, a joint effort to try and control the costs on these things while we're figuring out what to do next.
Chris seemed to indicate a likely solution is a combination of locally produced power and then going to the markets, some iteration of that. Is there a downside to relying on the market? Is there? You just mentioned you could get a 10-year rate, which is really kind of incredible to think about, but is future market volatility a potential downfall?
Well, I think.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's a retail question. So I think the issue is you need to hedge it. So yes, you can buy that block of power for a very, very good price going out 10 years, but you're also going to have peak power that you buy above that, and then super peak power that 30 hours a year. And you can buy market hedges so that if the power spikes to $500 a megawatt hour, $1,000 a megawatt hour, your customers don't actually pay that. So yes, there's a downside. There's price volatility that you don't necessarily see with coal. There's also supply volatility. You're relying, if natural gas is your fuel, you're relying on the nation's pipeline system to deliver that. And anything happens to the pipeline system, your power plants are in trouble. And we do know when the polar vortex happened and other events like that, very hot summers like 2012, the price of power goes up. And so as a retail buyer of power, if I'm buying power in today's market for my customers and it's going to be 100 degrees and 100% humidity tomorrow, I'm going to be paying $250 a megawatt hour for that power. So, people would say, well, gosh, you had Station 2, you could have generated it for $55. And the answer there is yes, we could have. The problem is that we then would have had this unit there that for 30 hours a year, it was worth its weight in gold. Whole rest of the year, it's a money loser. And on balance, it just doesn't make sense.
From a wholesale perspective, Judge, we're in this market every day. I don't see the market risk when you go out and you enter into a 10-year long-term contract at a fixed price. What you do is you look at it 5 years, you go out and do that 10-year price. 5 years from now, you look at it again and say, what do I need to do? Are we still forecasting this to be out an additional 10 years? And then that gives you time to make other arrangements. Because the problem with building a power plant is a long-term investment. It's a 30, 50-year investment, where these others, when the world changes, they're shorter term, and you can actually and make some different moves to help yourself. Where once you sink that cost in that plant, you just own it forever.
Are y'all kind of advocating that natural gas is kind of trending the way that you want to go in the future on this?
Well, from my perspective, if I started with a blank piece of paper, I would have a diverse fuel mix. I would have some coal, I would have some natural gas, and I'd have some renewables. I think, and Chris alluded to it earlier, storage technology is really coming along, and that's going to be a game changer on the renewables. If storage ever develops, and it's getting there quickly actually, then I think renewables is going to play a much bigger role. So I wouldn't limit myself to just any one resource. That's just my take, and these are going to be personal preferences, so I'm not saying Chris should do the same.
So I agree with Bob that if you're starting with a blank sheet of paper, you'd have a diverse resource mix so that you have a problem in any one supply stream and you don't black your customers out. It's just common sense. I wasn't advocating that anything was going anywhere.
Right.
I'm just observing that natural gas prices have fallen precipitously in the last 8 or 9 years because of fracking. And the volume of natural gas that's out there is huge compared to what it was. In 2009, we were paying $9 a decatherm. Today, we're under $3. So literally, natural gas is 1/3 of the price of what it was just a few years ago. And so natural gas generating can be load following. It can be very responsive. So it's been what we've looked at to fill in the gaps when the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine, which is the other two main renewables that you see nationwide lacking storage.
It sounds reasonable that you come up with a combination, is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
to me, natural gas is fine now, But once they get everybody on natural gas, for some strange reason, we have a shortage. You understand how all that works, like the fuel, of gas and stuff like that. I farm, and we use anhydrous ammonia, which is made from natural gas. Well, when corn's $7 or $8 a bushel, guess what? Natural gas is real scarce. We just can't make enough anhydrous for some reason, so they jack the price up. So I think a combination of those three things make a whole lot of sense. So,
In the event that Station 2 was mothballed, let's just say, it's the cost in the event there was this, for some reason, we're not as efficient as we planned. We start having another glut and need the electricity. Would it be out of the question, though, that would be too expensive, in your opinion, to bring that back online?
Can I give this a shot? Oh, sure. And then you're the expert, so correct me when I'm wrong. So,
Just what if?
well, so to keep a plant available to run on coal, you have to certify it every quarter that it meets its environmental. So you really can't mothball it. You have to run the
Had to
darn
run
thing.
it, yeah, okay.
At least periodically. And if you run it just a little bit during the year, you've got to make all the capital spend. You've got to overhaul the turbines. You've got to put the effluent controls. You got to do all the stuff you have to do to keep it running.
Yeah, and you had those numbers in the charts.
So you incur all
yeah.
those costs, and you've got to have operators. You've got to have, you got to be doing your maintenance. You got to keep the place lit and secure. And it's not cheap just to have it standing.
Just
by.
to sit in there, yeah.
Yeah, I have a little bit different take on that because we are currently doing something very similar to our Coleman facility up in Hallsville. It's a 3-unit station, similar to Station 2, but there's 3 units there. But we are preserving it for a restart. And it costs us about $1.5 million annually to preserve it. We've got staff on site, not full staff, but we've got a skeleton crew. They make the rounds, they do rotation, they rotate the equipment, and those kind of things. We keep hydrogen and dehumidifiers on all the boilers, turbine generators to keep them from rusting. So there's a lot of work and cost to doing that. It would cost about $1.5 million a year to preserve it for a restart. And that's the actual term that they use is mothball status if you look at the industry.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. We may call you back when you come closer to reaching an agreement and give us another update if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Gentlemen, next on the agenda is an appointment to the County Board of Assessment Appeals. I'd like to recommend that Pam Marshall, who currently serves on the board and is rolling off and is eligible to serve another term, and who has agreed to serve another term, would like to be appointed, and I agree, so I'm going to offer up Pam Marshall as a new appointment to the County Board of Zoning Appeals. Anybody would like to make that motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other questions about that? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman,
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander,
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
You have in your packets a renewal of the HyperReach agreement, the reverse 911 feature that we have on our website to alert the public to emergencies. Larry Kerber, our EMED director, is here if you want to give a brief statement about this renewal.
We are currently using HyperReach as our public notification system, and we've been doing that for the past year. That contract is up July 1st. And so in good faith, we went and contacted and has evaluated 3 vendors, suppliers of this type of product. And after reviewing it, we have determined that the HyperReach is still the best option for us. Under the new contract, we would have an unlimited usage of the service. And in the other vendors and in the past, you would have had, every time you used it, it would charge minutes against the contract. And you would have a block of minutes of maybe 42,000 minutes. And once those were used up, then you would have to buy another block of minutes. By going with an unlimited, we don't have to worry about that. That means that we can use it as much as we want. The National Weather Service, whenever they alert somebody through the phone system, it's already, it doesn't hurt our usage. So we've felt that that was the way to go. We also requested a 3-year contract in order to lock in the cost of that particular item in the budget, so you know what's coming up for the next 3 years. Again, there are many other options, and the things that are looked at and are helpful in what this contract has versus the others or the other vendors. So I recommend to the fiscal court that you agree to go into contract with HyperReach for the next 3 years at a cost of $9,500 per year. And the contract has been reviewed by Steve Gold, our county attorney, and has, I think, said it was all in order and appropriate.
Same price as last year?
Last year it was $9,000, I believe.
So now it's 9,500.
Yeah.
Is that increase reflected in the budget that you submitted that we're going to be voting on today? Okay.
Yes.
So it's accounted for in the new budget.
I think I put in the new budgets because I didn't know how much it was. I believe I put in 10,000.
Okay.
So.
Judge, this is a 3-year term, and given that we're at the end of a fiscal court term, I did have them put in there something similar to what we did with the jail tablets agreements that you saw at the last meeting under Section 6 term. It is a 3-year term. However, a successor fiscal court would have between January 1, 2019 and July 1, 2019 to terminate the contract if they so chose.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Kerber? Entertain a motion. Oh, let's read the resolution, please.
Whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court, through the Henderson Emergency Management Department, uses reverse 911 technology to communicate with citizens and to inform the public during emergencies. Whereas the Henderson County Emergency Management Director has recommended to the Henderson County Fiscal Court that the current service being used through Sam Asher Computer Services Incorporated, DBA HyperReach, is beneficial to the county and should be continued. Whereas the Henderson Fiscal Court approves the recommendation of the Henderson County Emergency Management Director, and whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court deems it to be in the best interest of the citizens of Henderson County to maintain service through HyperReach, now therefore be it resolved by the Fiscal Court, County of Henderson, Kentucky, as follows: that the Henderson County Fiscal Court hereby authorizes and directs County Judge Executive Brad Schneider to execute the attached HyperReach services agreement and to execute and all other necessary and appropriate documents required to effectuate the continuance of reverse 911 services through HyperReach.
Entertain a motion to that effect.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman,
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander,
Aye.
Magistrate Todd,
And Mr. Hubiak, would you please come to the podium? We're going to be discussing the designation of applicant's agent that is in your packets. A quick update on what this is.
Last week we went up to Frankfurt for the applicant agent meeting for the FEMA disaster that we had this spring on the flooding. Was briefed on that, and along with that we have 2 items we have to supply to them. One is the electronic funds deposit, which Brenda has given me that information, and the designation of the applicant agent by the Henderson County Fiscal Court.
And this document would be designating that person as you, William Hubiak. Any questions about that? We need a motion to approve that to move forward with our FEMA applications.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other questions? Please vote.
Magistrate Todd,
Aye.
Magistrate Putman,
Aye.
Manager Alexander.
Aye.
I'm not going to thank you for that.
Thank you. Last fiscal court meeting, we had first reading of the adjustment of our transient room tax ordinance to account for the new developments involving our tourist commission. And we now have a second reading of that ordinance, and I will turn it over to Mr. Wiesen to read the ordinance.
Mr. Wilson, given the length of the ordinance, I believe the statute would allow for the reading of the ordinance by summary.
Which means the very top.
You're welcome, by the way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gold. An ordinance amending the existing ordinance relating to the adoption of and collection of a transient room tax in the county of Henderson.
Motion to approve that.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Again, thank you, Mr. Gold. Please call for a vote.
Manager Putman.
Aye.
Manager Alexander.
Aye.
Manager Todd.
Aye.
I'd like to call Treasurer Brenda Ryder up to the podium. We're going to be holding the first reading of our proposed 2019-2020 budget. Excuse me, 2018-2019 budget. Ms. Ryder, since we had our workshop and agreed on the draft, you have tucked the corners in, dotted the I's, crossed the T's. You want to discuss a little bit about that for the document in front of us?
Yes. This is the first reading of the proposed budget for fiscal year 19. After the court's approval, it will be forwarded to the Department of Local Government for approval as to form and classification, and then returned back to the court for the second reading. The budget is presented as a balanced budget in the total amount of $28,044,571.12. A breakdown of the funds for that: the general fund, $564,309.22. The road fund, $4,546,302.02. The jail fund, $8,965,420.59. The LGEA fund, $1,089,914.82. The state grants fund, $1,213,200. The federal grants fund, $167,944.48. The economic development fund, $110,000. Construction project bonds fund, $2,387,479.99. What has been changed since the May budget workshop? The addition in the general fund, the addition of the transient hotel tax for revenue and appropriation in the amount of $6,000, and this will be a direct flow through. The jail fund represents the latest revenue figures that were received and is reflected in the various revenue and appropriation lines of this fund. The LGEA fund is including state grants in the revenue and appropriation lines of $96,391.07. What this represents is two current solid waste grants that are currently in process, as well as a household hazardous waste grant of $18,000 for the new fiscal year of 2019. The state grants fund has included $13,200 for a Homeland Security grant, which is in progress for the Cardin Volunteer Fire Department. This, again, is a flow-through. The federal grants fund for the Delta Regional Authority grant, which is an airport drainage project, in the amount of $167,944.48 has been added. Another fund, which is new to the budget, is the Construction Project Bonds Fund. And what that is the remaining bond proceeds for the actual construction of the 911 and the jail kitchen projects. The jail kitchen currently in the bond proceeds has $557,404.56 remaining in that. The 911 has $1,830,075.43. These are dollars that are remaining in the actual construction funds. The annual payment for the debt service of these bonds will remain in the general and jail fund respectively. The only other changes from the budget workshop was there were a couple of transfers, and they were within lines that did not affect an increase to the overall budget. It was moving from one line to another, leaving the budget total as the existing as of that night of the budget workshop.
Brenda, could you go back and give me the grand total one more time of all funds?
$28,044,571.12.
I got $28,062,571.12. Do I have an old copy?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably so. This has been a work in progress since
Okay.
Friday through yesterday.
Got it.
Sorry.
No problem.
There's been like 2 revisions in the last 3 days.
We will make copies of the one you have in your hand and provide it to the court, but she did read the totals into the record.
Yes, got it. I was just saying, it was probably one that I had previously, and I just stuck it in my packet.
For Fridays.
Did y'all have it too? Okay.
The totals have been read in. You noticed she mentioned the tweaks. I do like the fact that we are breaking out the bonds, the construction bonds, into a separate form, a separate fund that we can keep better track of. I think that helps in identifying that money in its relationship to the rest of the budget. And for the most part, the rest of the changes were flow-through projects, as you heard. We have the jail project in there now, Amy. If it ends before the end of this fiscal year, that we can amend the budget to reflect that it's being closed out. But for now, we have to assume that it may leak over into the new year for legal reasons. So the budget has been presented. I'll entertain a motion to approve it as presented.
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any other questions of Treasurer Ryder?
I need to make a change. I apologize. I've picked up the wrong copy. Mr. Putman was right. The $28,062,571.12.
Do you want to reread this? We need to reread this.
Okay. General fund receipts in the amount of, or the general fund in the amount of $9,564,309.22. Oh, okay. Road fund, $4,546,302.02. Jail fund, $8,965,420.59. LGEA fund, $1,107,904.82. State grants fund, $1,213,200. Federal grants fund, $167,944.48. Economic Development Fund, $110,000. Construction Projects Bond Fund, $2,387,479.99, for a total of $28,062,561.12.
That matches what is in your packets. Yes. The budget has been read and presented. Entertain a motion to approve that.
So move.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any other questions of Treasurer Ryder?
Pending upon DLG's approval and changes to form and classification, these amounts could vary a little bit when we receive the second reading, or receive it back for the second reading.
I want to thank again the department heads who helped us reach a fairly smooth budget workshop and get to these cost and revenue goals pretty expeditiously. And I'm glad we were able to work through that in a really professional manner and reach a good budget. So we have a motion and a second. Without any further questions, please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
And for the record, I'd like to vote aye as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Gentlemen, you have in your packets the summary recommendation of a committee we formed to review our county's property and casualty and workman's compensation insurance, which is going to be renewed later this year, July 1, I believe. And there were two companies that bid. Our current provider, Kentucky Association of Counties, through its agent Rob Brown, who's with us today, and also E.M. Ford and Company through their agent Mike Hazelwood, who's with us today representing Tokyo Marine, an international insurance company. Committee reviewed those carefully. We took a lot of information in. We had some neutral third-party advice from an insurance executive out west, who I happen to know real well, who provided good information but very neutral counsel. And again, we have a 3-page summary of the committee's recommendation that was sent to you earlier last week and is also in your packet. Since both Rob and Mike are here today, if anybody would have any questions of them or the committee's recommendation, happy to do that now. Like to say something?
I have a clarification on the recommendation form that I would like to present to the court and respond to an email from a magistrate I received. Can I do that at this time?
Sure.
Thank you, Mike.
This is about 5 pages, and if you'll just bear with me for a second. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Mike Hazelwood, and I'm a partner and agent and licensed consultant with E.M. Ford and Company. E.M. Ford and Company is a commercial insurance agency with offices in Henderson and Owensboro. We specialize in commercial insurance and write many of the larger entities in the region. I personally started the Henderson office from scratch in 1995, and we currently have 5 full-time employees associated with the Henderson operations. We provide good wages and benefits and require all of our Henderson staff to belong to a civic organization of their choice which the agency pays for. We believe that it's important to not only invest your time in the community, but to support local enterprises whenever possible. I'm here today on behalf of those employees to support their work they did in the county's insurance business. I want to thank you for the opportunity to allow us to participate in the county's bid process, and also thank the employees in each department for taking the time to meet with us and provide the tours and information we requested. Everyone was very helpful, and I believe our combined efforts will benefit the county's risk management program in the future. The efforts of your employees allowed us to identify 8 buildings that were currently owned but not currently on the county's insurance schedule, remove 1 location that was insured by the city, and restructure the county's property insurance in a way that will help mitigate future deductible expenses. We were also able to identify that the county did not have earthquake or terrorism on their current insurance form. We were able to advise the county of the financial impact those uninsured exposures could have, and which they took under serious consideration. One other opportunity that we introduced to the county was the enactment of a drug-free workplace designation that would automatically save the county in excess of $10,000 a year in workers' compensation premiums if achieved. E.M. Ford and Company is a commercial insurance agency and the only participating firm in this bid process that represents and currently writes public entity business for Liberty Mutual, Travelers, Tokyo Marine, KECO, and the Kentucky League of Cities. These carriers are all leaders in public entity insurance business within the Commonwealth, and we have experience with all. However, we are independent and not tied to any one carrier. This allows us to be objective and provide our clients with the best products. Our proposal was with Tokyo Marine, HCC, which is the 18th largest insurer in the United States, and rated A++ by AM Best, a rating very few carriers achieve. Tokyo Marine has been an admitted carrier within the Commonwealth of Kentucky since 2011. They currently write a number of public entities in Kentucky and are currently quoting on many cities and counties. We also quoted the workers' compensation with KEMI, the Commonwealth's leading workers' compensation insurer, which is also A- rated by AM Best. KEMI's scale provides a tremendous amount of resources that should benefit the county. The amount of information submitted was voluminous, and I wanted to highlight some of the differences that may have been easily overlooked but would be valuable to the county. Some of these were subtle and not mentioned in the recommendation summary. The difference in coverages. Tokyo Marine's defense costs are outside the policy limits. This is important due to the fact that defense costs can be significant for larger claims. The county's current policy only has $3 million in general liability and auto limits, and defense costs are within the total limits of insurance. If you incurred a large claim and had $500,000 in defense costs, those limits would be reduced to $2.5 million, jeopardizing the coverage in the defense of the employee, the county, and the political officials. Tokyo Marine's limits will not be diminished by defense cost. Liability limits. Our liability limits contain $10 million limits, which is in line with the City of Henderson and other private entities with 200-plus employees. These limits are twice the revised limits of the KECO proposal. Business income and extra expense. We have a $500,000 separate limits for business income and extra expense versus KECO's limit for $500,000 combined. This is important because you need to scale that up. This coverage should be increased further and tailored to match the jail revenue, which Amy just said was $7.2 million. So that's an item that you probably need to review, and I would be happy to explore that with you. We also had an additional $41 million in boiler machinery, equipment breakdown limits. KECO had a sublimit of $15 million where we provided the entire limits. And that's if you had a boiler explosion that damaged a large building or something like that. Sexual abuse and molestation coverage, we had $10 million. I couldn't discern KECO's limit. Third-party harassment provided under Tokyo Marine for the EPLI coverage. KECO did not provide that. Earthquake coverage. Our proposal contained earthquake coverage, and the current policy and revised KECO proposal did not. What would happen if after a small earthquake, the jail cells would not operate? What would the cost be to repair that? What would the loss of revenue be? Would we be able to continue to pay our jail staff? Earthquake is important. Terrorism coverage. We offer terrorism coverage as an insured option. To my knowledge, all of our larger public entity clients accept this coverage. They feel that they are more likely targets in a terroristic acts than most private businesses, and they understand that protecting the community asset is not just ensuring their own property. If someone in a fit of rage bombs the judicial center in an attempt to intimidate or coerce the government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof, without terrorism coverage, the county would have an uninsured loss. This would not only be for the property, but for the liability for the people injured or killed as well. This is a tremendous exposure that would significantly impair the county's financial state if not covered. The recommendation summary, revisions, clarification. Evaluating these bids is a very complex project, and it is easy to miscalculate a total bid price when you have multiple options in different coverage forms. I have a few questions and some information regarding the recommendation summary that I believe the court needs to understand. Earthquake. On the revised summary that you have, it states that the county intends to purchase earthquake. I have been informed that KECO has been asked to pursue earthquake options. The summary also reveals that the county was appreciative of EM Ford's earthquake option, and that a similar option from KECO would cost an additional $19,000 in premium. This $19,000 option, nor any option of earthquake, is listed in KECO's revised quote of $487. If added, that would bring KECO's total cost to around $499,000. Response to the statement regarding one of our carriers in the summary. There's a statement in the summary that Philadelphia Insurance, a wholly owned subsidiary of Tokyo Marine, not Tokyo Marine, but a wholly owned subsidiary, had a reputation for rate volatility in new markets. Steve Silvers, an executive of Philadelphia Insurance, who went to college with Rob and I, sent me the following email reply. Philly actually has a reputation for rate stability, with an average insured staying with us for 13 years versus the industry average of 3 for our competitors. Our retention is consistently around 92% because we work closely with our insurers. The industry is really happy if they can get in the upper 70%. Response to leverage with CAECO and breaking out the work comp. There's a statement in the summary that says Henderson County could exert influence over CAECO if need be. However, when Judge Executive Snyder recognized the opportunity to break out the work comp and automatically save the county $13,351 by writing it with KEME instead of CAECO, CAECO told him that they would prohibit him from breaking out the workers' compensation. It was all or nothing. Response to statement in the summary that CAECO has is much less likely to enact steep cost increases. Tokyo Marine's proposal has a 3-year rate guarantee option that is loss ratio dependent. According to the loss run report data that was printed on March 21st, 2018, the County of Henderson would be on track to obtain the guarantee. Therefore, if the county remains on the same track for the next policy period, Tokyo Marine's premium would remain the same with no increase for the 2019 policy year. In addition, according to my underwriter, that our proposal does not have the maximum credit applied. It is priced according to their underwriting guidelines, and they are fairly conservative. On the same note, according to the minutes listed on CAECO's website for the Kentucky Association of Counties All Lines Fund Board of Directors meeting dated 3/21/2018, the current policy, the fund's actuary stated that the fund needed $40,684,000 in premiums. However, as of October 17, the current policy totaled $39,975,000, a difference of $700,000 or 1.75% of the actual premium increase. New business rates on all accounts would result in a 9.1% increase. However, blended rates are used based on the exposure. Therefore, the actuary recommended a premium volume increase of $700,000. Even with this data, the fund's revised renewal quote offer to the County of Henderson with increased property and liability limits to meet the revised option in the packet is $59,513 less than your current premium. Can CAECO sustain this rate decrease for Henderson County in future policy years? Will this be at the expense of other counties of the fund? I don't know. That's not my job. The validity of the revised $480,487 quote that's on the first page of the recommendation. Is the revised premium accurate? And I'm glad Rob's here. The revised option referenced at the bottom of the first page of the recommendation summary states that CAECO's deductible increase of $1,000 to $2,500, a total of only $1,500 for each of the GL, property, public officials, employment practices, law enforcement, and auto liability would decrease the premium a total of $34,805, or 12% of the overall All Lines Fund quote. However, CAECO's own summary of rates by deductible rate schedule that is provided to you and was filed with the Department of Insurance on May 2nd lists the following rate structure for the $2,500 deductible. None equal 12%. This information was obtained from the Department of Insurance by an open records request after first requesting this information through the judge and through CAECO directly. Our team could not configure the exact cost of the premiums due to the fact that the individual premiums were not broken out in CAECO's proposal. However, if we take a high average of those coverage line schedule, deductible credit and assumed that the credits would be close to the average of 6%, instead of 12%, utilizing the revised quote, we should be able to get in the ballpark until KCO can respond with an exact number. I've referenced the total cost of the All Lines Funds quote without any deductible credits, which is highlighted in yellow. And that number is $292,535. I've also estimated one with a 6% deductible credit for all coverage lines associated with the previous revision to provide a ballpark estimate, which will not be exact. This is on the brown, in brown, on the lower left corner of the spreadsheet, which is $274,982. If you add the workers' compensation cost of $222,757 and the cost of the earthquake option at $19,000, you will arrive at KCO's ballpark total premium. This may be in the neighborhood of $516,000, which is in excess of $50,000 of EM Ford and Company's proposal. I appreciate the court consider EM Ford as your agent for the County of Henderson's insurance business. Our proposal has always been the lowest and best bid, which the court should be obligated to take. It provides the county with significant savings, which appear to be even greater today than at the time of the committee's recommendation, and some additional security in the form of significantly better coverage. I don't think anyone can argue those facts. I also believe the citizens of Henderson County would prefer the county invest their monies locally with a company that has a strong local presence, employs local people, pays local payroll, property, and net income taxes, rather than send the county's money out of town to somewhere that is located in excess of 200 miles away, that does not contribute to the community, have a local business license, or file net profits or payroll taxes in our community. If the local governments do not support their communities and choose to invest their monies locally, how can we convince other business and industry to invest here? I appreciate you allowing me to provide that. I'll be ready for any questions.
Would Mr. Brown like to respond to any of those?
Morning, man.
Morning.
Admittedly, I didn't come prepared to have a significant response to that, but I did come prepared to speak to really why we're all here today. And essentially, I think much of this story has gone a little bit lost in deductibles and limits and away from the why of KCO doing business the way they do here with Henderson County and our other county members. KCO has a Kentucky-based operation and is member-owned. KCO doesn't have the choice to go anywhere else. And since it is member-owned, when KCO does well, you all do well. And the policy itself is guaranteed non-cancelable. The only reason that your policy would be canceled is if you just elected to not pay the premium. So no matter the loss ratio, no matter the claims, no matter the story, the policy is here for you each and every year. KCO's been doing insurance for 40 years here in the Commonwealth, and I've been lucky enough to see 20 of it. I don't know how that's gone so fast, but 20 years I've been associated with KCO, and the programs began themselves when the insurance carriers who are in and out of Kentucky have either priced themselves so high that county governments couldn't afford to purchase the insurance, or they just up and pulled shop and left altogether and left our counties with no choices. Each of those times, KCO came forward with a new insurance program, first in 1978 for work comp, and then again in 1987 for the All Lines Fund. And over that period, I would guess I've seen dozens of carriers come in as the IT market and then subsequently leave when their appetite for Kentucky changed. Finally, I would say that KCO is not the end-all, be-all of insurance. it's a pretty darn good program. It's built to provide what we believe is the right level of coverage and affordability. For the affordability part, over and over, KCO has followed a consistent pricing model for our membership. We're loaded with services for the members, many of which include our free loss control services, our experts as they relate to claims for specialty areas of the county's operations, whether that's the jail or the sheriff's department or any of the issues you all may face on a day-to-day basis. Frankly, KCO's meant to be easy. We like to say that Staples beat us to the easy button, but that was easy is the model of KCO, and I think you guys would agree with that over the period that we've worked together. Some of the Mike mentioned a few of the coverage perspectives as to viewed weaknesses for KCO. And the one thing KCO has done over the years consistently is we've continued to bring new and innovative coverage to the members, and can decide that fairly quickly since it is such a small operation. Some of the highlights coming for this year, we're going to include a violent events coverage. Obviously, we don't have to look too far in the news every day, every week, of a new issue facing areas of the country, including fairly close to home down in Marshall County. Violent events are a real serious issue, and we're bringing a coverage forward effective July 1 for that. We're going to be covering drones effective July 1. Most of our members over the last 2 years especially have come forward with the need for drones coverage in the various capacities of operations. We've studied it and now are coming forward with a coverage available to you guys in the new fiscal year. The defense outside limits that Mike mentioned as well. We'd also been studying that and have also come forward with a change to our policy effective July 1 that will allow for our defense to be outside of our limits. Sexual abuse and molestation, we're adding effective July 1 a $1 million sublimit of coverage for that, because again, over the years we hadn't really seen that as an ongoing risk, and we believed that the original founders of KCO, your peers, did not want to provide that type of coverage, but the litigious nature of society has led us to think, I think we need to do that, and so we're adding that effective July 1. I think that a little bit of this has been mired in deductibles and limits comparisons, but the real reason of why KCO is offering insurance is that it's, when left to the commercial carriers, the choices become limited and quite expensive, versus you all owning your own business, which there's no more local than owning your own insurance company. So with that, I wouldn't have anything else to add.
I want to clarify something. I have in the dozens of combinations of limits and deductibles that KCO was willing to work with us on this because the bids were not apples to apples. The most recent one I have is with $5 million limits, $2,500 deductibles almost across the board, including workers' comp, including earthquake insurance, for a grand total of $487,501. Does it sound familiar? Is that a valid quote? Compared to the lowest deductibles that Tokyo Marine was willing to offer us, $2,500 in some categories, $5,000 in others, including workers' comp, including earthquake, for a total of $466,000, $466,456, difference of 5%. In the summary of the committee's work, we talked about the fact that the county did not solicit this bid, that almost to a person in the courthouse, we had been pleased with KCO's work, but out of our respect for both Mr. Hazelwood, EM Ford, and the products that they represent, we were willing to open it up to see what a bid would look like. Again, as Mike Hazelwood said many times, this is not buying pickup trucks or bushels of corn. It's very, very difficult to get an apples-to-apples comparison. Bidding insurance, choosing insurance is very complicated. So I think, as we discussed, Mike, it was going to be quite a tall mountain to climb to get the county to shift off CAECO, considering we were not unhappy, and the pricing that we had seen so far was with just in a few percentage points of one another. The limits, as reflected in the summary that the committee produced, were noticeable, but not necessarily something that the county had been in jeopardy with before. At the lower levels of limits, the $3 million, $5 million, were the same as approximately 113 other counties in the state with a similar program. None of our recent claims experience had even approached those sorts of limits. But the quote I just read, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Brown, at $487,501 is at increased limits, $5 million and $5 million limit in aggregate. And you mentioned to me that those limits are only purchased by a handful of counties in the entire state, correct? So even with that increase, again, the quotes were very, very similar. We had a very difficult time trying to parse between the necessities of certain coverages or the looking into the future to try to determine the validity of certain coverages or coverage limits. So I'm telling you, it was not an easy decision. And part of our respect for you, Mike, was that we even got this far. And I think I've said that before.
I appreciate that. And I want to qualify that the $487,000 was exclusive of earthquake. So if you add $19,000 to their premium, it's going to be $499,000.
I don't think that's correct. Is it that I have earthquake included in the coverage here?
The proposal I provided to you, that does include the earthquake, yes, sir.
Yeah.
What is the cost for the earthquake? Because when we took the changes, the increased liability, which was $13,000, and bringing their blanket limit up to our limits was another $1,000, that brought the premium to $492,000.
I think the gist of what you're saying is that are you accusing CAECO of offering a discounted rate now that they will increase later? Are you concerned that they're breaking the law in some fashion?
I'm saying that their deductible schedule does not match up with what they file with the Department of Insurance. I'm also stating that in the previous proposal that I have from you, it never mentions earthquake. But in your previous proposal, your recommendation summary, it states the earthquake coverage is at $19,000. So
That is $19,000 with a $25,000 deductible, which comparatively their program did provide include earthquake at I think $1,900 plus or minus was in the proposal, but it was also for $100,000 deductible. So we have
That's right.
I think it's a lot of the story of CAECO's program. It's built on having our members have lower deductibles. So yes, when we did raise our deductibles in our program, the premium did go down.
Is this question of filings something that we need to be worrying about, or is it something that you need to settle internally as agents in this state?
We've never had a question around our filings from the Department of Insurance. I'm not sure where Mr. Hazelwood's going with that, but that's something that's never come up. I didn't go and review Tokyo's filings.
Is there a law? Isn't there a law? Are you supposed to talk about another insurance financials in proposals?
I'm not talking about their financials. I'm just talking
Sounds
about.
to me like, I look to here like you're saying that they're going to need this much money to get by and all
Well,
that type of thing. Is that, I don't know, is there a law against that?
I don't think that I'm talking derogatory about anybody's financials. I'm just making the case that, how are they, you asked me who is most likely to enact a premium increase. And I have a company that has a 3-year loss guarantee, and you have that information coming regarding your rate structure. And your rate's down $59,000 from your current year with increased limits. I don't understand that.
So interesting enough, and I will go back to one of the numbers that Mike did quote of the 39 million or so.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Here, sit right here.
Yeah. Sorry, as Mike did quote the $39 million of the CAF, premiums from this past year. Organically, which means additions and changes and new buildings, new autos, new everything that we do. I believe our, and I don't have the exact number, but I do believe that our current premium in the program is north of $40 million just organically before we even came into this renewal cycle. So, yes, the actuaries are saying that you've got to get to a certain number, but organically we're almost there. So, again, I'm sorry, I just wasn't prepared to address that.
Understand.
I have Keiko's original proposal here that shows the premium at $278,000 with a option for a $10 million limit at $27,000. Now, earthquake. So, if you take now I know they revised their rate, their deductible from $1,000 to $2,500, which is only $1,500. I don't think that brings the premium down $34,500. I'm just questioning that. And I sent an email to Brad and Rob asking that question. I said I need to, and I can read that email if you.
No, I mean,
it basically said over the last 6 years, if we would have had a $2,500 deductible instead of $1,000, the county would have incurred $31,500 in additional retention for the total 6-year period. So a $34,800 decrease in premium for 1 year does not make sense. So I question that revision as well as the earthquake, because I do not think it was on that. And I have some other information back at the office, but I don't think the earthquake was included in that figure.
There are various iterations of Keiko's offerings, and the one that I have in front of me includes earthquake, along with increased deductibles and increased limits. And as to what this means, Mr. Hazelwood, I'm not sure it's for us to decide. I have an offer of insurance in front of me. We're going to sign a policy with somebody, and we're going to probably sign it for a single year, and we shall see what happens at the course of the end of that year as far as rates go. Want to also say that lowest and best can be very subjective, as you know, especially in insurance. I think the committee tried to do its best to not only consider lowest but also best, and including in that consideration of best is comfort level, recent history, recent experience. So there are many things that go into that, and I know Magistrate Alexander served on the committee. Anything that you'd like to add to this conversation, Charles, about that consideration?
Yes. Well, that's very important to me, because I, as in personal insurance, have had people want to quote me, always farm owners policy. They want to quote, and they don't understand how much trouble it is to switch. Number one is, well, give me a quote. Well, I've been burned a few times on that, because I switched for a lower premium, and it didn't turn out. I didn't get what I wanted a lot of times. So I think that in my mind, and we have no problems with Keiko. They are part of us. We belong to Keiko. This county does. As you were talking about being local, it's pretty local when you actually own part of the company. That's about as local as you can get.
If you own part of the company, why wouldn't they let you break out the workers' compensation?
Well, why wouldn't they let you lower the deductibles to equal, so we wouldn't have all this jacking around? Why couldn't you get that done?
Our company's at admitted care, and they file rates with the Department of Kentucky, Kentucky's Department of Insurance. Right. So they can only operate off their filed rates. So they didn't have that low rate. Very few.
Why can't they?
I have a $5,000 deductible on my homeowners. The county of Henderson should never have a $1,000 deductible. I mean, none of you probably have a $1,000 deductible on your homeowners. You probably have at least $1,500 or so.
Well, if we can get it, why shouldn't we?
Well, it's just, it's the way the.
My understanding is,
I
sir,
want to submit this.
This is a big company, and you talk about also locally. Where does the majority of the premium money go if we spend with your company? Where does it go?
Well, I hire
the majority of it. No, majority of it. I know you get your commission, which you pay your people for. Where does the vast majority of the close to $500,000 go?
Well, it would go to the insurance carrier. Some of it would go to the.
And where is that?
That's in Michigan.
Is that the big head office?
That's
in
the
Michigan?
regional office of HCC, yes.
Okay. Well, this premium here goes to Lexington, Kentucky. So when you start talking local, local can be a lot of different things. Plus, like I said, we participate. We own part of this. We're in it, all the counties together, because they had trouble with private companies. That's what got it all started, like co-ops and farming, those kind of things.
It's 40 years ago, and it's the same situation as these utility companies. That model may be a little outdated. The original quote I have, proposal from KCO, before they raised their liability limits, raised their property to meet ours, and added earthquake, was $278,000. Now, in a bid process, I don't think it's fair to somebody to be able to lower their bid. Now,
we asked them to change their bid. We didn't ask them to lower their bid. We asked them to try to get close to
try to get a little bit closer.
You couldn't do it, and we asked them to come to you instead of you coming to them because you couldn't do it.
I appreciate it.
Right?
But the $278,000 did not include earthquake. So if you increase the coverages and the deductibles, you're not going to get the two. And add earthquake, you're not going to get.
I would entertain you get down with them, and you could actually, if you call that changing your bid, you can change your bid.
Well, and we did actually give Mike
down.
the chance to do that a little bit, adjust to try to get a little bit more.
You had a chance to lower your bid or raise it, however it was, to get equal, so we could judge them. Is that not true?
We did. We lowered our deductibles according to his request, and it ended up saving the county a considerable amount of money.
We didn't ask you to lower them. We asked you to try to get with others, didn't we?
And that involved lowering, because that was the major difference between Tokyo Marine and KCO was the deductibles.
Hey, Mike, I was
comparison.
curious, what other counties do you represent?
What other counties do I represent on the insurance business?
Yeah.
I don't have any counties, but Tokyo Marine has a couple of other counties as well as another municipalities. We have worked with counties in the past, but currently I do not.
Okay.
But I do have a fully insured carrier, A++ rated, that saves the county money. And I would appreciate if you look into that last bid, because I just don't think that that's a fair representation of that.
Well, and it is an important question, Rob, and I hope you would speak to this, and that I would hope that any quote given to us by KCO would be a legitimate quote that is not something that is done to bait and switch a year later. If you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, and again, we in this business we don't make a habit of speaking about the financials of other carriers, which is certainly being intimated right now by Mike, which is quite surprising. But I will say that KCO did just complete an audit, just for the what it's worth category, from the Department of Insurance, a 4-year audit that took a year to complete over a period of 4 years of a review. And I would characterize that outcome as an A++ scenario for KCO, in that the auditors themselves, after a year of being on property, did not change even a penny any of the results from KCO in the prior 4 years. So I hear A++, I hear fully insured carrier. I hear those a lot. But speaking of an audit done by here in Kentucky, that's a big deal, and a very strong statement of the financial strength of KCO. To your point, Judge, or to your question of some sort of bait and switch or some sort of lead with a price and not match that. Keiko, over the years, frankly, has never been the cheapest insurance option. We've been competitive. We've been in the ballpark. We think we've matched the marketplace, certainly with the level of coverage that far exceeds what's available out there, and our stability over the past 40 years of providing the coverage to the fiscal courts of Kentucky, and quite honestly, we've grown to the non-fiscal courts as well over the past years, where we have 700 plus members in the program, only 113 of which are fiscal courts. So this same story has matched to the libraries and the water districts and the transits and the area development districts and the community actions across the state. That story of stability has appealed to them as well. So we wouldn't have that story and the I guess the retention of our members over the years had we led with something that we could not back up, whether through our operations or through our policy.
Thank you. Any questions for Rob or from Mike? I do want to say that. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have something? Again. Lowest and best can be very subjective. Lowest is obviously not, but best can be. And in insurance, cheaper is not always better, as you well know. Both of you well know. This was a very difficult decision. Mike, when was the last time you were allowed to bid the county's health, property and casualty insurance? 1996. 1996. So again, a measure of our respect for you, and your experience was entertaining a quote at a time when we were not unhappy with Keiko, when we had good experience in both claims and workers' compensation and working with the office, and yet still we're interested in giving you a chance to quote. So again, please understand that. If we were really not if we were interested in shutting out local agents, we wouldn't have allowed any bids. We would not have been interested in entertaining any bids. So again, the recommendation of the committee is in front of you. It addresses some of these questions raised. The primary, I think that the nut of it is that any small amount of savings, the committee was worried that a lack of familiarity with the market on Tokyo Marine's half, its lack of history in our market, the higher deductibles in many respects, and in some cases different coverages or coverages that were not as effective as Keiko coverages, knowing that some of Tokyo Marine's coverages were also advantageous. All those put together did not sway the committee for the small amount of savings that were presented to want to switch. It did not indicate to the committee that it wasn't interested in keeping this conversation ongoing and being very vigilant about our costs and our coverages. We are interested in renewing for a single year at this point in order to keep close track on this. And because we know that there are other markets out there for this business that are apparently competitive, and thinking about Kentucky, I think it was very interesting to the committee. I would also say that a track record in Kentucky would be helpful for Tokyo Marine if it truly is interested in coming into Kentucky and bidding on county business. That would be helpful. A major sticking point with the committee. So having said all that, you look like you want to say something else.
Well, they insure thousands of municipalities, and I believe you called two of their counties municipalities that they insure, and they have a glowing recommendation.
It's true, very true.
So
it's also true that every state's different, and one of the pluses on the Kentucky Association of County side is its familiarity with the vagaries of county government here in the Commonwealth, and the way business is conducted between the General Assembly and the local level, and various other things.
I think one of the things we get with Keiko that over the years I've noticed is they are a county specialist. They're not school board. They're not municipalities. They are a county specialists. That's all they insure is counties. They know them probably better than most anybody. And I feel like that. I feel like that's part of the reason they exist.
And that's a compliment to Keiko, and not a criticism of
Right.
any other agent. It is a compliment to Keiko.
You know, they're like a specialist instead of a general practitioner kind of thing, the way I see it. They're specializing in us. With that, I make a recommendation that we use Keiko for property liability and workman's comp insurance.
Okay, we have a motion.
Is the motion just to move?
We're going to
continue
move forward with Keiko. Yeah, we'll be working on
Continue to
finalizing
move forward with Keiko. That's the motion.
We'll be working on finalizing the policy for the next meeting to vote.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
I'd like to clarify. I want to thank the committee for their hard work. However, myself being a member on the board of directors of Keiko Insurance, I'll have to abstain.
I will vote to move forward. Aye. So thank you for your work. I very much appreciate it. Again, we're going to renew for a single year. This is a part of our budget that we're going to keep close track on, and I encourage you to remain in communication with me, Mike, and Rob, obviously.
Can I ask one thing?
Sure.
Would you please send me a copy of that Keiko breakdown?
Which one?
The one that constitutes the $480,000?
Sure.
To show
Absolutely.
me the earthquake and the full breakdown.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to call Brenda Ryder back up with claims.
I have 3 claims from the general fund. A check in the amount of $10,000 to the Penny Round Narcotics Task Force. This will come from the Sheriff's Grants lines. Second, in the amount of $3,076 to Ralph Mitchell. This is for county attorney office renovations and will come from the renewals and repairs of the courthouse expense line. The third, from the road fund, in the amount of $57,783.22 to Dimple Wolf Ford, and this is for the 2 pickup trucks that were recently ordered.
Motion to accept those.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gold, your reports.
Judge, I have several checks to present today. A check for salaries, FICA, and retirement in the amount of $2,009.98. Dental and life insurance, $5.28. Health insurance, $390.39. Jail fees collected, $711.66, and $1,399.18. Interest in the amount of $37.20. Reimbursement for the use of a county vehicle, $170.56. And I want to thank Mr. Hubiak for that. We've got a new employee that doesn't have the most reliable vehicle and had to go to some training in Frankfurt, and we're able to make that happen, so really, really appreciate that. The total remitted to the county today, $4,724.25, and total for the fiscal year, $125,558 even.
Thank you, and I'll entertain a motion to accept those payments.
So move.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
This time, if anybody in the audience would like to come up and speak to the court for the good of the county, Sheriff Brady.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate the discussion over insurance. It was interesting, and I think it was, y'all did a lot of hard work. As a department head, I'd just like to say Keiko serves us well. They provide us with a lot of training materials. They provide us with safety meetings. They have a driving simulator. They advocate for us in Frankfurt with the legislature. Those are things that are kind of intangibles, but I agree with you, Charlie. They do specialize in county government and what we do, and I think they do a good job, and no reflection on anybody else. Every insurance company has good things and bad, but KCO has really served the Sheriff's Department, I think other departments in the county well. So I appreciate Charles' hard work on this thing. I know it was a tough decision, but it's where the rubber meets the road. KCO's done a good job for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Our solid waste coordinator, Nancy Watkins.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to first hand out a recycling agreement, and as your
Thank you.
Scott Gibbons with Gibbons Consulting Group approached me a couple months ago and wanted to bring recycling to us from a contract that he has with another industry here in Henderson County. And this is the contract. Henderson County Recycling will be processing the material. We will get 60% of the profit, and 40% would go to Gibbons Consulting. And we would like for you all to read that over.
And Nancy,
if you have any questions.
Just to clarify, this is already sorted
Yes.
material, right?
Yes.
It's a little bit different when we met with
And
Mr. Gibbons. He's going to be bringing it pretty much ready to go and ready to market. So
Yes.
at its core, this is a marketing agreement. He's got the stuff already separated. Rather than market it, he's going to use Henderson County Recycling to do that. He's going to bring the stuff to us, and then it's going to get folded in with the rest of our other recyclables. And for the portion that he brings in, he'll get 40% of the profit of that, and the county will keep 60. So essentially, we're adding it into what we're already doing and getting that. So, and it's a non-exclusive agreement. So, any other entity that had a reasonable sized volume of recyclable material that they're willing to go ahead and sort, we could enter into the same type of agreement with them.
Exactly. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was only going to amount to about 6 tons of material, and I ship out at least 40,000 pounds a month. So, and we're completely caught up on baling right now. I'm waiting for more cardboard to come in. So it's not going to be a burden on me or the rest of the crew.
Since it's already sorted and everything, the
Yes.
cost, the actual cost of this is going to be negligible.
The biggest deal with recycling is the sorting. The sorting is a killer to the recycling industry because of the intense labor that's involved in, or the cost of labor in sorting. So,
Even though this is not on the agenda, with your okay, I'd like to move forward. It seems a pretty simple agreement. I'm sorry to spring this on you like this, but I do think it's.
Steve, you think everything's good on this?
What I was going to say is that it does give Nancy and her folks the right to reject any material that comes in. If they bring it in and it's not sorted correctly and it's something that
Correct.
they don't want to fool with, they have the right under this agreement to say, no, we're not taking that. So it's it basically allows Nancy to, if somebody brings something in a condition that is marketable, to go ahead and build it, sell it with our marketable material that we already have. So it's really a win-win for everybody, and the 60% commission for marketing something is pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And you're okay with handling the accounting and record keeping? That's not going to be too big a burden.
no, not at this time.
Well, again, don't normally like to do this, but I think it's a simple agreement. So if you're willing to move forward with it, and make a motion to accept it, I will.
I guess we run up the pole and see who salutes, huh?
Well, if it doesn't work out, it says, you can terminate the agreement at either side at any point.
Right.
So if it's not going the way you think it should, or
Yeah, we made sure
Givens
I think it's
to
just
draw
a-
this up to where
Yeah,
we can
we-
30-day
terminate it really
notice.
So,
easily.
yeah.
I move that we go into a recycling agreement with what's
Givens
it?
Consulting.
Givens Consulting Group.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions of Nancy or Steve? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman,
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander,
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir, Mr. Hubiak.
First of all, I'd like to pass on the thank you for the vehicle to Nancy. That was her recycling Jeep that we utilized for the county attorney's office.
Oh, well, thank you, Nancy.
We didn't have any spares at the road department, but she was very gracious to work that out with us. I want to thank you all for the recycling agreement also. This is something that Nancy had put together, and we met with the Givens and Consulting Group and Mr. Gold and put that together. Basically, material comes, all we have to do is bail it and then market it. And so it's a win-win situation, and will boost the recycling tonnage numbers for the county, which is what we want to do on the overall state level, which goes, to Nancy's credit for that also. So, this is something that we looked at, and we wanted to make sure we got the better half of the deal. So it was a win-win for everybody, but I think we got the better portion of it. So anyway, we had a Surface Bond Committee meeting this morning, and Chairman Todd was there. We had ERP, Environmental Fund Company, asked for some bond release. We have 3 permits where the state has released their phase 1 bonding. They have 3 phases. Henderson County only has 2. Ours are reduced from 100% to 50% and then 50% to 0 based upon the completion of the reclamation. So with that, I'm going to read these off, and I'd like the court to make a motion to go ahead and reduce the bonds down to the 50% level. First one is HC 851-0051 increment 8 from $26,200 to $13,100. Second one is HC 851-0051 increment 9, which was $750,000 down to $375,000. And the last one was HC 851-5013 from $69,360 to $34,680.
Can you briefly describe what those were for?
These are the reclamation bonds that are already in place. The phase 1 reclamation, where the dirt has been put over all the areas, have been completed. The state has released their phase 1 bonding already. We have copies of them with the request, and they will have to come in once this is approved. They will replace the bonds that are already in place with the amounts that I have just stated. So we will still be covered with 50% of that, and we're in good shape.
And where are the locations?
They're all out in the Hebbersville area and on various permits. One is the Hall Road area, and the other one was 51 area. So we did speak with Mr. Monday, who was representing him this morning, because the question come up always about Conaway Road and the permit applications to transfer the permits from the Corps of Engineers, from Patriot to ERP, have been submitted, but they have not been moved forward with yet. So as soon as that happens, he said that he would notify myself and the fiscal court to set up another meeting with the Corps about what we can do on Conaway Road.
Do you have a motion to approve these other, the halving of these other bonds?
Do we need to do them one at a time?
No,
Can you do them collectively?
I think we can do them collectively.
So move.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to cut those 3 bonds in half that Bill read into the record. Any other questions? Please call for a vote.
Magistrate Putman.
Aye.
Magistrate Alexander.
Aye.
Magistrate Todd.
Aye.
With that, there was one other question we had was when they had think about when they're going to be finally finished with the reclamation out there. They're right now concentrating on the preparation plan area down at the end of Onionville Road on the Green River. They stated that their target right now is to try to complete all the reclamation within the next 24 months, and then they'll have crop yield and things like that to do for another 3 years before all bonds would be released.
So the other 50's looking at 3 years down the road at least.
No.
5
2
years, excuse
plus,
me.
Yeah, 5.
2 to 5.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else for the good of the county? Magistrate Putman.
Judge, if you would bear with me, I want to touch base on, that was a big subject we tried to clear up for a lot of people on that insurance, and, you know, not being a part of that committee, it was a lot to digest when you look at those numbers and you're moving. We're sitting here shuffling papers, but there was a paragraph, I think, in the summary that says the committee felt the difference in the coverages, which is one of the big issues we were talking about here today, were a wash in some respects and was not overly concerned about the differences in the limits considering our claims history and recent KCO experience in other counties. And they went on to thank Mike for all he done in the work. But again, I appreciate comments. It's kind of hard to get apples to apples, but you know, for the difference in the premiums, it was, I don't want to call it minuscule, but it was minimal, you know, and you know what you got. They're specialists. So we had talked about it long enough, but when I was reading the summary and the recommendation, it kind of jumped out at me. You know, so I appreciate the committee's work, and everything's good in the 4th District, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Magistrate Alexander.
Everything's good. Thank you for your comments, and also, Sheriff, thank you for your comments. I sure wish we heard them earlier. No, thank you. But anyway, thank you for your comments, and I have nothing else, Judge.
Magistrate Todd.
Just same thing. Everything's good, but I do appreciate the hard work and the decisions y'all made for KCO. Like I say, I serve on the board, and they're experts, and so I think we've made a wise decision here today. Thank you.
Mr. Gold.
Good job, Kurt. He was giving people hugs earlier as they came in, trying to be as much like Sue. He didn't call anybody sugar, though. But he's doing great, and good to have you aboard up here. Other than that, Judge, things are going well. We are getting very, very close to the final stages of the remodeling, thank goodness, that is going on in my office. The pace is slowing down a little bit because of the fact we were using Parks employees to do so many of those things to try to save money, and the weather has broken. So the remainder of that will probably be done on rainy days and such, but I know my staff and the PVA's office below us will be really glad when that happens, but we are very appreciative of all the folks that have helped out with that and have borne with us as we've had to do all kinds of shuffling throughout the office. Everybody's had to move to one little corner to get this part done, and then we'd have to move back to another spot. And so everybody's moved their desks, seems like 20 times, but we're getting about there, and we're already having comments from the public when they come in about how the smaller conference room that we have is more user-friendly and better for them. So I think once we actually get the little waiting room opened up, it's really going to be something that the public's going to like a lot. So thank you all for bearing with us on that.
Thank you, Mr. Gold, and I'll reaffirm your congratulations on Kurt Wieson's first fiscal court meeting as clerk. Good luck transcribing these minutes, my man. It's going to be an interesting several hours you're going to spend with this tape. I want to say that, and the folks remaining here understand this, because I think you all understand government even better than I do, but for the folks who are going to be watching this video later and talking about this issue, one of the toughest things we do is to decide between carriers or vendors that provide services to the county when one vendor is local and one is not. Our responsibility as a court is to provide both our employees and the citizens of this county the best services possible for the money we spend. Sometimes, and many times, we hope that that means spending money with a local business. But that's not what it always means. Sometimes it means going with the business best suited to our need, that provides us the most security, the most confidence, and can provide what we know we're going to need in the future. And that doesn't always mean spending the least amount of money. It means spending your money in the estimation of the people who make these decisions most wisely. And that is a tough call. That is always a tough call, especially when you have very competent local companies at the local level. Not every community even has to worry about this issue. We do, because we have excellent people here in Henderson County who are very good at their jobs and can provide us services when we need them or want them. In the case of this insurance question, again, Mike Hazelwood is a very good professional insurance agent. I'm sure Tokyo Marine is a great company, and it sounds like they're growing in the United States. It made it a very difficult question to ask for the committee that was convened to consider this question. It is an absolute compliment to KCO that price was not the final deciding factor, and in questions like insurance, I don't think it should be unless there's a tremendous difference, and in this case there just wasn't. It's incumbent upon KCO to continue to earn our business. It's also incumbent upon us to always give a local person a chance when there is a legitimate reason to, and that's why I encourage Mike to bid in the first place. Want to continue to make these deliberations carefully, try to do the best we can for the citizens of this county with the budget that we have, and I think the work of the committee reflects that. I don't think if there's an inherent bias in this court at all, I think it's towards local in many respects, and that's probably as it should be. But in the end, we need to make the choices that we think are best, and I do believe that careful consideration was given to the decision to move forward with KCO. Again, we will monitor that situation and make sure we're getting the best bang for our dollar. And if there are local options in the future that we decide make more sense, we'll turn that direction. But I do appreciate both Mike and Rob being here today to help answer questions. It's never easy to do these things, and I appreciate the committee members and the court's deliberations. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor can leave.